Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. I am here today with my good friend and comedian Alicia Cooper. I have followed
Hello.
this woman's work since I met her several years ago, and I'm so excited to introduce her to you. This conversation series, I've been talking to people from different walks of life just to introduce you to them and talk to you about how they have created success in their own lives. And we're specifically talking about life purpose, how you find what you are really, really meant to do. And when I started putting together this conversation series, I knew that I had to reach out to Alicia because I had, been, when I should say been there because we were acquaintances at that point, but I remember her sharing her dream of comedy and then just watching her make steps along the way. I thought that she was an ideal person to introduce you to and to tell you about how amazing she is. So all of this is for the relaunch of RevSherry.com, which is my new website. I encourage you to go there, get signed up for my newsletter. I actually have a free gift for you if you sign up for my newsletter. And then also I have a new class that starts next Wednesday called Jumpstart. Wake up the passion that fuels your life purpose. And so these conversations that I'm having with Alicia and that I did with Jamie and Mark last week and Corey are really just my way of saying thank you for supporting me, supporting the online ministry that I've been doing. I really appreciate that, and I just want to share with you some people that I think are dynamic and whose work I admire and really appreciate. And so with that, I'm just going to bring my girl in. Hey, Alicia.
How you doing, Sherry?
I'm
So good to be with you
happy.
today.
It's good to have you here. So I want to just kind of go way back to those days when we were working with the Ultimate Group, and you were a segment producer for BET for Black Entertainment
Yeah.
Television.
Yeah, I started with them as an intern in college. I went to the University of Maryland, College Park, and ended up interning at the Washington, D.C. location of BET. And I just, I stuck with it. I stuck with production because I always wanted to do something in television production. And then when I saw Living Single, I decided I wanted to create sitcoms. Didn't have any idea how difficult that is. But yeah, when you met me, I was producing behind the scenes for BET.
Right. Okay. And I don't even remember what conversation we were having because I I mean because I'd seen you at the office like a few different times, and
Hmm.
I don't even know what the conversation was when you were just expressing an interest in doing comedy.
Yeah,
Where did
we be in the cafeteria, just on a break, and we just start talking and having a good time.
Yes. So I mean, where did that dream come from? Had that been with you since you were little, or was it just one of those like you woke up and like, you know what, I'm gonna go on stage?
The funny thing was, I think I have a lot of comedic family members, and my cousin Karen was 9 years or is 9 years older than me, and she would stay at our house because she get kicked out of her mom's house for being mouthy, and she come to stay at my mother's, and I watched all the programs she watched. So I'd be like 8 years old watching something a 17-year-old is watching,
Right.
and she watched a lot of comedy. So at 8, I knew who all the hot comics were: the Judy Tenutas, the Marsha Warfields, the Rita Rudners, George Wallace. I followed these guys. It could be even somebody like a Robin Williams, a Gallagher. It was just so many. Gilbert Gottfried that I would just watch because she was watching. I really, really enjoyed it. And we watched, of course, the comedies, the Good Times, the What's Happening, and things like that. So I always had a comedic sensibility. But I never thought about it as a career because in elementary school we didn't see that many African Americans making a career out of it. It wasn't until HBO's Def Jam that I started looking at this as something viable. Still as a layman, you don't realize what's happening on an HBO show. There's no language restrictions. By the time people get booked on there, they're seasoned. You think people are just jumping on stage, talking off the top of their heads, improv, because that's how easy they make it look. And it makes everybody at home feel like they can do it too. So when I saw,
Right.
well, you didn't realize they had been working this material out in the club for 5 and 10 years before you saw it. So, I would jump on stage in the mid 90s and I would crash and burn because I didn't have anything prepared. So, I did that for a while. I quit. and went back into television production. It wasn't until the year 2000 when I was working at BET's O Drama that one of the producers, Doris Rollins, she runs Martin Lawrence's film company now, she said to me that she's doing a show that Friday on the next big thing. It's going to be 2 comics, 2 singers, 2 rappers. And she said, I've booked you as one of the comics. I said, Doris, I don't do comedy anymore. I tried a few times. It didn't work. She was like, well, you're booked. I said, Doris, I have my own 3 shows due this week. You're booked. You're the funniest person in the office. And I was like, I don't know how funniest person in the office is going to translate to national television. But so I went and got a book. And the book was Judy Carter's Comedy Bible. And so I started reading it and realizing there's a structure to writing a joke. And then once I realized that, I wrote like a 3-minute set, and I went to the Ha Ha Cafe in North Hollywood trying to hear it, see if it's working in the club. And I got a little bit out of it, but then I had to go and tape it Friday, and they had judges that episode. They had Chocolate, they had Ellen Cleghorn, Annie McKnight. Kim Whitley was a judge because she was one of the hosts and a comic. And they gave me good feedback after I did my set on the show. And if they hadn't given me good feedback, I don't think I would have stuck with it.
Wow. That's amazing, Alicia. I didn't know that. That's an incredible story. So,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is that even though the folks like Kevin Hart or the Wayans brothers or Robin Williams, they look like they're being the village idiot,
Mm-hmm.
but in truth that there is an art and there's a form behind it.
Oh yeah, there's a very calculated look.
Okay.
They have a point of view. They have material that speaks to that point of view, and they've been working on this stuff so that by the time you pay your money to see it, you should feel like you got your money's worth.
Right.
So, yeah. And we all know Robin Williams was far from any kind of ability. He grew up very wealthy, went to the best schools in the U.S., very intelligent man. And, he just has so many different talents and was so multifaceted and so much energy, you couldn't hold him down.
Right. So is comedy energy? Is comedy being funny? Like what makes a great comic?
Well, I guess it's so many different things because there's so many different kinds of comedians. Like you'll have your intellectual comic like a George Carlin, where they're almost like a savant with their comedy, but it still has to be hilarious, which of course he was. Then you have your observational comic like an Ellen DeGeneres or a Seinfeld, where they can make their observations just hilarious. Then you have the people that are great storytellers, the Kevin Hart's, the Bill tell you a story, and it's just because the art to telling a story is you have to have punchlines all throughout that story. So they're the masters at storytelling. Then you have the political comic like a Chris Rock, where they can take politics or Bill Maher and current events and have you rolling on the floor with that. So it's so many different types of comic. You just have to figure out what type you are and then hone that skill.
That's really interesting. Now, you're giving me ideas for the pulpit, girl. I'm thinking, okay, like, all right, because I know I got to keep the people entertained. I got to give them some truth, but I gotta make it go down easy. So a joke will help me.
Right.
I never even thought
very palatable.
Yeah, I never even thought.
Yeah, you could diffuse a lot of stuff through humor.
Yeah. So, okay, and and this is more science. I feel like these interviews become personal to me. How do you even find out what your personal style is as a comic? I mean, do you just get up and just kind of try and crash and burn, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's what I don't do? How do you find out?
Yeah, in the beginning, it's a lot of trial and error in the beginning. Like your first year, you'll be practically in flop sweat. Your first, you don't know what's funny yet. You haven't found. You're still intimidated, because 90% of comedy is confidence. You're not confident yet, and you write what makes you laugh. So once you realize what makes you laugh, that starts to tell you your humor. Some people have a very dark sense of humor. They'll make fun of death and somebody dies and they make it a same day. And, so you have to figure out what makes you, and then it'll fall into place.
Okay. Hang on,
So
you're
just
breaking
comics
up
aren't
just a
really
little bit.
readers.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're breaking up just a
Can you
little
hear
bit.
me now?
Okay. Yeah, there you are. You're back.
Okay. Some comics don't read, they don't watch the news, but they'll tell funny stories about I grew up then and when, and then there's some readers watch everything and want to talk about it. So it's
Mm.
whatever is indigenous to you, what you get the most natural joy doing. And that's why you see so many different styles of comedy. Mike
Right.
Epps has a unique style. I was watching him Tuesday night. We were at the main room in the Comedy Store, and Mike Epps is just hilarious. He does some stuff on old men and what they say, old talking to his woman, and it's just so funny because he can really make what the old guy says or the old player says hilarious. And
Yes.
that's obvious something that interests him. He's very good at it. He's probably one of the best at it. So
That's
people just
awesome.
find
Yeah.
what interests them and run with it.
So where then do you put yourself in that group of comedians? Like where have you found that you land?
I love current events. I love politics, but the thing is that we all know shelf life. Like right now, I'm talking about the 9-year-old girl who was on vacation and her parents paid $200 for her to go to the best fun for a 9-year-old. Wow, $200 to shoot somebody in the head with an Uzi. Why does a
Right.
9-year-old need an Uzi? What happened to Barbie dolls?
Right.
So that has a short shelf life. That probably can last about maybe another month. But with the type of humor I like to do, I have to constantly write. So what I'll do is I'll throw in some other things that are what they call evergreen, and you can tell them forever. But my love is just what's in the news now. What's
Got it.
happening right now is my first love, and it's making it more difficult for me because I can't tell those jokes for 20 years. But it keeps me writing.
Right, right. So now, do you have a kind of a writing discipline? Like, do you write every day? Do you write, once a week, or like, do you have a writing schedule?
I don't really have a writing schedule. Like I said, I'll read some stuff on my iPad or on Facebook or one of the social sites, or I'll watch something on the news, and then if it's interesting to me, I'll think of how I can turn it into a bit.
Hmm.
So my stuff isn't regimented, but it's just what's in the news now, and can I make that funny? And then
Right.
I'll keep adding on and adding on and adding on.
Okay, cool.
But I
One
don't.
of the
Some comics plan to sit down every day and write. I'm not that regimented.
Okay. Do you think that you'll get to that place, or do you like, if you had to say, okay, what's going to take me from where I am to where I want to be? What's that next thing that you need to pick up in order to kind of graduate, if you will, as a comic?
Well, I think as comics, comes a time when you have to get more exposure, more TV exposure, more film exposure. Your name has to get out there. And one thing that lets you know if your name is getting out there is your Twitter followers, your Facebook fan page, things like that. Because now you can't get an agent, you can barely get a manager unless you have a ton of social media followers.
Right.
So you don't really need talent, you just need followers. So if you can muster that up, then that's the new hustle.
So
So
you have to build your own audience.
right, you have to build your own audience, and because the comedy clubs want to feel like if they book you, you can hit send and reach 1 million people. Like I'll
Got
be
it.
at the blah blah improv. Come check me out tomorrow. Send, and then all your followers at least get it because nobody can come see you if they don't know who you are. So
Right.
it's the social media that's getting people more. So I want to build my social media. I'm auditioning now for more TV, films, commercials. Just trying to get them on the bigger shows. That helps because you can tell people follow me after a big show and hopefully get some more followers that way. But that's the thing. You got to get more exposure because it's now it's even more competitive than ever before.
Right. So now this is really fascinating for me because this is now you kind of stepping a little bit into my world with the social media, with doing stuff online, which
Hmm.
is talking to that audience, building community with your audience, and building a relationship with them so that they know who you are, whether they ever see you on TV or not.
Hmm.
And you become sort of their a celebrity in their circle, if you will.
Right. Right.
Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then
It's an
do
interesting
you
time.
blog at all?
I haven't. Somebody told me about blogging. That hasn't really interested me, but what has interested me is the latest thing that a comic told me that I should do, which I am going to start doing probably in October, is I'm going to start a podcast. So I'm going
Oh,
to do
that's
that.
good.
Yeah, and then because I can
Yeah.
take my recorder with me to the clubs, and I'm going to see at least 10 celebrities a night, and I can podcast and put that on iTunes and things like that. So I'm going to give that a shot.
That's smart. Yeah, and just all you need is a clever name for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
okay.
already have my name. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the
Good.
name is called a Hot 10 with Alicia Cooper because I don't want to take up these A-listers' time. If you tell somebody just give me 10 minutes, they'll be more apt to oblige.
Yeah,
So it's going to be 10 minutes with the celebrity, and we're just going to call it a Hot 10 and keep
that's
it moving.
smart.
Yeah.
That's smart. That's smart. Well, listen, any information that you need, girl, I've been digging into this world and figuring out the whole world of podcasting and blogging and
Oh
online
wow.
development, all of that. It's like, who even knew I would go in with a film degree and a REV? Like somehow I'm marrying these two things together.
Together. Yeah, 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 yeah. You
Mhm.
still directing.
Right, exactly. That's really interesting. Okay, so now talk to me about just overcoming setbacks, because I know that anybody who has ever gotten anywhere has had to overcome something. Can
Okay.
you take me back to kind of like your worst night when you were just like, you know what, forget this, and what was that like, and then what did you have to do to get back up?
Okay. This comedy career is really challenging for female comics. First of all, when you look on most of these lineups, there are a lot of lineups that are 100% males. Then you might get a woman. You might get a female on a lineup, but that's rare too. So what we had to do was start all female lineups, just so we could work. So it's very challenging breaking into these men. It is so hard to get them to put you on a lineup. And then you see the men that they put on a lineup, and you're like, okay, I could have been on that lineup. So that's one main challenge that even in going into 2015 is still a battle. But one of my stories about overcoming something was, this was years ago. I probably had been doing comedy 4 years at the time. And myself and a girl who was working with Monique, because we worked on the Parkers, Monique, a bunch of A-list comics were doing a show in Oakland, and Monique's manager wasn't going to go, so she had an extra room. So myself and one of her assistants went down to Oakland to stay in that extra room and go to the concert. So I got in the limo with Monique to ride over to the concert. She was in the limo with her manager. She was nice enough to let me in with them. And so I asked her, new comic, I said, Monique, you have any advice for a new comedian? And she said, yep. She said, get half of your money before you leave the house and the other half before you open your mouth. Now, anytime I haven't lived by that, I've been burned. And Monique was 100% correct. So we were talking about other stories, and I don't know how we got into this. I think I may have asked her about bombing or something to that effect. And she said one time she got on stage on a show, forgot her act, and ran off the stage. So I'm sitting here in the back of this limo thinking, ran off the stage? What could have possibly been that bad to make you run off the stage? So I'm just looking at her blinking, trying to figure out what went down and why. So fast forward to about 2 months later, I'm booked to do this DVD called The Spirit of Comedy. It's a gospel DVD. And so I said, okay, the people came to the Comedy Union, and that night there was only like 3 people in the audience, and I was one of the comics. And they said, you gave us a show like you were in an arena, and there was only 3 of us. They said, we want you to do our DVD. And I said, okay. So the DVD was taping in Inglewood. They gave me the information. I get out there, no air conditioning. It's like 100 degrees that day in Inglewood. They had these big industrial fans, but whenever they start rolling, they have to turn the industrial fans off because it messes with the audio. So your clothes are sticking to you. That's how hot it is. So I'm still a fairly new comic. I'm sweating like a fool. My clothes are sticking to me. I'm nervous. It's so hot you can barely breathe, and I forget my act. I do exactly like Monique says, turn around and run off the stage so fast. I wonder if I would have done that if I hadn't heard that story from her, because I really didn't know it was possible. But once she told me the possibility, I exercised that. And I took off running off that stage. I mean, I was in the back fanning myself like I was in church. I said, y'all got to turn one of them industrials back on. The makeup artist had to redo my makeup. It was brutal. Oh. It was brutal. When you can't think because it's so hot, right, and you're already fairly new and trying to remember your act, it was a perfect storm for me to run off that stage, and I was gone.
Right. So, now, okay, so here's the thing. How do you even memorize all of this stuff? Like, do you like have, like, you know how you go to school? I never cheated, but you know how folks say, like, they write the answers on their hands. How do you remember an entire set, let alone an hour? Like, are there cue cards? Like,
well, you know, in the beginning, there's a lot of things people do. Like, there was one girl who would put her, what they call is a set list. Okay. And what the set list is it's just bullet points. Like, if I want to talk about Oprah, I would just write a little dot and the word Oprah. And then the next thing, I write a dot and 9-year-old at the gun range. And the next dot would be Ferguson, Missouri. The next dot would be moving to Vegas. You know, so you just do your set list. This one girl would take a glass and she would put it on top of the set list so it would look like she's drinking, but she's really reading her set list. So people have different ways of doing it. Some
That's
people
brilliant.
Just take
That's absolutely. I need to do that in church.
Exactly. Put it right under that glass and be drinking and reading.
Right.
And, some people just take their 3x5 card. You know, like you said, some people write on their hand and they try to act like they wiping something and they reading. You know, so some people put their jokes on the floor and like try to lift it up a little bit on the floor. So there's a lot of ways you can get. And in the beginning, that is what a lot of comics do because you're still trying to learn your way. But what happens is once you get one bit and you feel like you perfected that, you can add on, and then you perfect that, you can add on. What I didn't realize when I first started was the amount of allowed repetition, you know, repetition that's allowable. Because I thought you're funny this night, but tomorrow you got to say a whole set of different jokes. It's not like that because each audience is different. Right. So once you get your routine down, you can keep telling those same jokes in that same order if you choose to.
Right.
You know, so you can use the same jokes and same material for years. The only problem is when you commit it to television. So if you put those jokes on Comedy Central, you put those jokes on HBO or Showtime, you cannot use them anymore because people aren't paying their money to come to a club to hear jokes they've already seen at home. Right. So that's what they call burning material. You're burning your act when you put it on TV.
Got it. But then I guess you're kind of doing that when you put it on social media too, right? In a different way.
To a smaller scale, to a smaller audience. Okay. You know, so if you're on Last Comic Standing, they're getting 4 million people, and you got like 10,000 Twitter followers. It's a big difference, but it's really TV that burns your stuff because people will get mad if they pay their money and come to a club and hear the same thing. They like, I could have popped in the DVD.
Right. I want you to be fresh, right? And then I guess that's when you need to get you a writing team so that.
Oh yeah, when you get to that level. Yeah. When you get to that level, most people have at least 5 writers.
Got it.
When you get to that level.
Okay. So I need some okay. So I'm here. This is what I'm hearing. I need some writers to help me with my material. I can't be going to the Potter's house saying the same old thing I was saying down at Creflo Dollar. Uh,
Well, you can go to the Potter's house and say the same you said at Creflo Dollar, as long as it hasn't aired and the Potter House people saw it already.
right. Oh, that's great. That's great. So now something I know because I've other friends that are comics, they always talk about how much material you have. You know
Hmm.
that you need to have 30 minutes worth of material, or you need to have what does that mean, and what like how does that graduate you to like getting on HBO or getting on a sitcom or getting recognized by producers?
Well, when you first start out, you're the MC. So the MC probably wants to have at least 15 minutes of material. Because even if they only ask you to do five and bring up the first, the feature, or 5 minutes and bring up the guest spot, they might ask you to do 10 minutes and bring up the guest spot. So you want to have at least 15 minutes starting out, because even if stuff doesn't work, you have to be able to make adjustments.
Okay.
Then the feature spot, you want to have at least 30 minutes to be in that feature spot, because like I said, if stuff isn't working out, you want to make adjustments. The feature usually does between 20 and 30 minutes. So, and then sometimes you want to work on your audience banter, because if stuff isn't going right, you might want to start chatting with people in the audience, and then go back to your material to break up the fact that this isn't going too well. Sometimes talking to the audience and saying something funny based off them brings you back in the game. Then the
Got it.
headliner does at least 45 minutes in most places. 45 to 60. If you're doing colleges, you need 60. So it's all about writing, get more and more. And it's a process. You started as the MC, you graduate to the feature, then you graduate to the headliner. And it probably takes at least a good 5 years to be a good headliner, a solid headliner.
Wow. That's some time.
Hmm.
You got to invest.
Yeah,
So you
you
got to
do.
love it. You got to love it.
Gotta love it. I
So
mean, this is one of the few professions where most times you're working for free. They tell you do what you do for free and make it your love.
yes.
Comics have done that, literally. You go to
Yeah.
some of these places and some of these towns that call themselves showcase towns, and they don't pay
Uh-huh.
you to go on stage. So you
Right.
actually go home with less money than you had when you left, because you done bought a drink, you done paid for parking, you done used the gas, so you in the hole by the time you get home for this game.
Right. Right.
How many people
So
go to work and come back with less money?
right,
A
exactly.
comic. That's why a lot of comics relationships are breaking up. The other person, like, you dragging me to the ground with your broke self.
Right, right. So wait, so okay, so how do you get to the place where you love it? Because I mean, I think about myself. If I not being able to pay my bills makes
Hmm.
me just not happy. Like, not, it ain't fun. I'm grumpy. I'm not funny. I'm
Yeah,
pissed.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
how do you get to the place where you love it and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna just love it regardless of whether or not it is giving me, whether or not it's paying me right now.
Well,
Well, maybe I'm saying what keeps you focused.
I mean, for the average comic, they have a day job, and they'll do
Okay.
comedy at night because the money doesn't come in like that, especially in certain parts of the country. So most comics have a job. Then if you don't have a job, you got to figure out other ways to get money. So I don't get, there's comics now that are driving for Uber, they're driving for Lyft. People are finding out other hustles. There's comics that are waitresses, comics that are just doing whatever they have to make ends meet. So, but like you said, when your money's funny, it ain't, it's not a laughing matter. It is not a laughing matter when your cell phone is about to get cut off and you think Spielberg's about to call.
Right.
Nothing is funny about that. So you have to make it work for you. So, and it takes time. I do believe the longer you stay in it, the more opportunities you'll get. Like this year, I won the 2014 Ladies of Laughter comedy contests at Gotham in New York City, and I started getting theater dates and more bookings, but it's all because I stayed in it. You know, and I remember this Joan Rivers quote, and I hope she's doing better in the hospital. There's a Joan Rivers quote that they asked her how many comics that started with you actually made it, and she said all of them that stuck with it. So you know, you gotta show up. You gotta show up. You gotta be in the game. And if you take yourself out the game, then you can't make it. So you got to do what you got to do to navigate these crazy waters. And in the meantime, it might include getting a job.
Right.
You have to assess your situation.
Right. Who are some of the people, the comics that you have been impressed by, that are I guess motivators for you?
I was always impressed by Marsha Warfield. You know, I liked her style. For her, there was a group of women who had to put on crazy clothes and crazy hair and crazy makeup and crazy gloves, you know, all that stuff. Marsha and Elaine Boozler were able to just stand flat-footed and tell jokes just like the men. Right. You know, so there was some trailblazers, and Marsha is one of those for me. Who else? Oh, Paula Poundstone. That woman is a genius. Like, I'm like, good great, how does your mind work like that? Like, Paula Poundstone is somebody great to watch. Margaret Cho has always cracked me up, especially her earlier stuff. When she first started doing her Korean Mother and nobody had heard that before. Right. And just the funniness of her family, which eventually got her the sitcom All American Girl. And she had her own way of doing things. It was extremely unique. Ellen DeGeneres with her observations, extremely unique. Chris Rock, hilarious, fearless. You know, I consider the stuff that Chris says very controversial, and he doesn't have a problem saying it, but, you know, who else is going to say it? It's like, it's Paul Mooney, you know, then it's Chris Rock was the second closest thing to Paul Mooney. Eddie Murphy got out the game. So I like listening to comics like that because you don't get very much of it, that extreme realness. Who else? Well, George Carlin, of course. I have to go back and watch his old stuff. Bill Burr is hilarious. Just so many really good comedians. So many of them.
You know who I love? And Whoopi did a documentary on her for HBO, is Moms Mabley. I think she was probably the first person that I like. She was just hilarious. She was absolutely hilarious, and I talked to, because Della knew her. No, Della knew her, and she
knew
Moms Mabley. Yeah, right. And she'd either done the Della Reese show or something, but I'd ask her about her, and she said, you know, she was all business. Like, she got on stage and she was hilarious and she was funny and she slayed them, but she was all business and she handled her business. And that was just one of the things that she said to me. And just when I'm thinking back now, because you were talking about comics that you were impressed by, she was someone, I don't even remember how I got exposed to her, but I was aware of her as a child. I think I'd seen some old tapes, because I think she was passed away by the time I was a child. But she just was funny. She was absolutely hilarious. And
groundbreaking.
Yeah, right. Have you had mentors that have helped you along the way? People who have kind of counseled you and helped you sidestep some potholes?
I can't necessarily say I've had mentors, but I have had comics who started before me that I'll call and ask questions of. You know, like a friend of mine, his name is Joe Recker. He's been doing comedy at least 26 years. He won BET's Coming to the Stage the second season. Little JJ won it the first season, and he won it the second season. And I can always call and ask Joe anything about comedy because he's seen it all, done it all. You know, everybody's open, all the celebrities open for him. You know, so I can ask him a bunch of questions. But I can't say that I've had a mentor, but every time I get around somebody who's doing this at a high level, I'll try to ask them a question.
Okay. And you know, I know with any kind of discipline and being great, you got to study. what is your study like? Do you constantly watch back, the tapes of yourself, or what do you do to improve?
I'll listen. Like sometimes when I'm on stage, I'll audio record with my phone, and I'll put the
Hmm.
phone on the stool, and I'll go back and listen to why did that work, what made that work, and why didn't that work this time. And it's always the wording. If something that worked didn't work the next time, you said something out of order. You might have it's one of those words. If you change one word in your sentence, the response is completely different. So that's why it's best to video or audio record, so you can go back. And I do that. I'll go back and I'll listen to my stuff. I'll even watch some videos. I go back and watch a video if I recorded it, and I will do that. Sometimes, like if I've had a break from comedy for a while, if you take a week away from comedy, you feel rusty. So I'll go
Really?
back and listen to some stuff. Oh yeah, this is something you need to do every night, because you go away for a week and you feel like you're starting over from scratch.
Oh
So
my God,
I'll go
that's
back and listen.
horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Whew.
that
Yeah.
is no wonderful. Okay, so does people always say comedy comes from a dark place, and people have had dark childhoods or whatever? Is it? I mean, do you agree with that? Do you feel like that's like really true, or is it more just is it this part of it, the grind,
Yeah,
that brings that?
I don't agree with that, because I know I had a great childhood. Maybe that's why it's taking me so long to make it. But I mean, I guess the tragic stories, they say comedy is rooted in tragedy. I guess the tragic story, I mean, if you look at Richard Pryor and how he talks about growing up in a whorehouse and things like that, that I couldn't possibly relate to. But it's interesting because the average American can't relate to. But there's a lot of comics who made it who didn't have a terrible upbringing. But maybe the statistics are more Americans have bad upbringings than good upbringings, so that would translate over to stand up or any other
To stand
field.
up, right?
So I don't know if I agree with that, but I mean, because even if you didn't have a bad childhood, just growing up, just being an adult in America, you're going to encounter some interesting situations.
Right.
So it's all in. I believe that it's all in the universality of what you're writing. I don't think any one comic should make their material too, like your material shouldn't be too urban based where unless you're black you can't laugh. Everybody should be able to laugh, and that's how I write my material. I don't care if you're Asian, Latino. I try to write my stuff where everybody can relate to. When you think about the sitcoms that do the best, there's sitcoms that everybody can relate to, no matter what your race.
Right.
No matter what any of this stuff, like the Cosby Show, everybody can relate to the Cosby Show. You
Right.
know, Roseanne, even though Roseanne's show was about working class people, it was a family sitcom. So you can relate
Right.
to Everybody Loves Raymond. You can relate to that show. They were an Italian family, but they reminded you of families you knew. So I just think that when you're universal, you can cast a wider net.
Got it. And okay, so maybe this, I'm not even knowing necessarily the answer. What makes it universal versus what shuts it down and keeps it very specific to one culture?
Well, yeah, if you always say, yeah, in the hood, you go to the hood and this, that, and the other. What about the people who didn't grow up in the hood? There's black folks who didn't grow up in the hood. So it's like,
Right.
it's like you're cutting out a certain segment. And people can't laugh if they can't relate.
Okay.
So but if you're in an all hood environment, it's fine to talk about the hood because that's the audience you're standing in front of right then, right there. But if you're on Comedy Central and you're doing a special, you want to reach everybody that's the home viewer.
Right.
So it's a lot of you need a lot of material. That's the bottom line. You need a lot of material. You need material for everybody. If you go into an all Latino audience, which I've done before, you need something for that group.
Right.
It's like specialized material. You need to write some specialized material that Latinos can relate to and will enjoy. And keep writing. Keep writing because you're gonna need something for everybody.
Right. 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 Alicia, this has been awesome, girl. This has been awesome. What is next for you? Like, where, so, I mean, I know you are not 100% where you want to be. I know that you are still growing and stretching. I've been impressed by all that you've been able to do. What's the next plateau?
Well, I lived in Vegas for 13 months and I just moved back to LA this week. So my goal now is to audition more and to hopefully get an agent. I've never had an agent in my life. So if I could get an agent, you know, I'm still trying to figure out what a manager does and the necessity of a manager. And somebody told me the biggest benefit to having a manager is for them to find you an agent. So, you know, so that's what I'm trying to do. My goal is to see if I can get some representation and audition more and hopefully book something that will allow me to put more butts in seats when I'm out doing comedy.
Now, do you do the whole circuit, the whole college circuit, or you need an agent to be able to do that?
Well, you need a college agent. Yeah, I actually have one, but there's a process to that too because you have to spend money to enter into all these different regions. So it might be like 7 or 8 regions, and you have to pay per region just to be able to showcase for these schools. So it's very expensive, you know, but if you start booking schools, it pays off. So,
Oh, wait. Okay, I'm sorry. A showcase is so that they can see you, to consider you, to bring you in as a
right, so
comic.
like say for instance, they'll do a South American region, North Carolina, all those schools down there. You have to submit, pay your money, submit your video, and get accepted. And then you go down to North Carolina where they're doing the showcase, and advisors come and they watch you. So it might be like 30 comics or whatever it is. They have a little bit of everything: comics, musical acts, ventriloquists, magicians, you know, poets. Everybody comes down there, and the schools decide who they want to pay out of their budget for that school year after watching the show. So every region has their own set of showcases. So it's a process, and you have to invest in yourself.
You sure do. You sure do. You got to go ahead and spend the money and say, hey, this is, this is it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Okay.
right now, I haven't been focusing on colleges. I'm focusing on getting on television or getting on a film is my focus right now.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Well, Alicia, I have loved this time that we have spent together. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. This has
Thank
been
you,
wonderful
Sharon.
and informative. And
Thank you.
I'm really proud of the work that you're doing. I'm so impressed, and I'm glad that you came and just kind of gave us the real. Like, one, you gave me an education on comedy, just to learn what it takes. And but it really speaks to that you've got to love what you do, and you have to turn it into a science. Because
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I heard for sure. That for me, when I look at the success that I've seen you create, that I know that there's a deeper understanding that you have about the comic game, if you will, that I think is necessary if you're going to be serious about anything. So thank you, girl. Thank you
And
so
thank
so
you.
much.
I appreciate you for doing this, for even thinking of having me as a guest. I appreciate it. And if you get a chance when you talk to Reverend Della Reese, can you please let her know that I saw her on Oprah's special? Remember Oprah did the 3-day event. What was it
Yeah,
called?
the
Oprah's
legacy, Legends Ball.
Ball.
Yes.
Right. And the last day they had the brunch. And Reverend Reese was talking about how they got to open Vegas, but they couldn't sleep there and they couldn't eat there. And I just want
Yes.
to let her know that every time I work Vegas, I think about the fact that I'm able to work Vegas, eat there, and sleep there because she was a trailblazer.
Oh,
So
I
will you
will
please
tell
let
her
her
that.
know that there's a lot of us
Yes.
out here that are very grateful for what she did, So she's put up with a lot, which
She
has
sure
allowed
did.
us to put up with a little.
Yes, she sure did. She sure did. Wonderful. Thank you so much, girl. Thank you very, very much. And I will actually make sure I give her a call and tell her exactly that.
Thank you
Cool.
so much. Thank you.
All
And you
right.
enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.